Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padavajagacharya Ashtototra Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padavajagacharya Ashtototra Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Kvantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Narayan Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Hadiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta Praresha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 6th day of December 2024 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in Canto 7, The Science of God, Chapter 15, Instructions for Civilized Human Beings, text number 30. Yeah. Okay, just give me a second here. All right. Yash Chitta Vijaye Yattah Yash Chitta Vijaye Yattah Syan Niksango Parigraha Syan Niksango Parigraha Eko Vivikta Sharano Eko Vivikta Sharano Bhikshur Bhaiksha Mitashanaha Bhikshur Bhaiksha Mitashanaha Yaschitta Vijaye Yattah Syanik Sango Parigraha Eko Vivikta Sharano Bhikshur Bhaiksha Mitashanaha Yaschitta Vijaye Yattah Syanik Sango Parigraha Eko Vivikta Sharano Bhikshur Bhaiksha Mitashanaha Yaschitta Vijaye Yattah Syanik Sango Parigraha Eko Vivikta Sharano Bhikshur Bhaiksha Mitashanaha Yaschitta Vijaye Yattah Syanik Sango Parigraha Eko Vivikta Sharano Bhikshur Bhaiksha Mitashanaha Yaschitta Vijaye Yattah Syanik Sango Parigraha Eko Vivikta Sharano Bhikshur Bhaiksha Mitashanaha Yaschitta Vijaye Yattah Syanik Sango Parigraha Eko Vivikta Sharano Bhikshur Bhaiksha Mitashanaha. Ladies. Yaschitta Vijaye Yattah Syanik Sango Parigraha Eko Vivikta Sharano Bhikshur Bhaiksha Mitashanaha. Anyone online? Zoom?
Yaschitta Vijaye Yattah
Yaschitta Vijaye Yattah
Syan Nitsango Parigraha
Syanik Sango Parigraha
Eko Vivikta Sharano
Eko Vivikta Sharano
Bhikshur Bhaiksha Mitashanaha
Bhikshur Bhaiksha Mitashanaha. Okay. Word by words. Yaha. One who. Chitta Vijaye. Conquering the mind. Yattaha. Is engaged. Syat. Must be. Niksangaha. without contaminated association. Aparigraha, without being dependent on the family. Ekaha, alone. Vivikta sadhanaha, taking shelter of a solitary place. Bhikshuhu, a renounced person. Bhaiksha, by begging alms just to maintain the body. Mita asanaha, frugal in eating. Translation. I'll say you see. One who desires to conquer the mind must leave the company of his family and live in a solitary place, free from contaminated association. To maintain the body and soul together, he should beg as much as he needs for the bare necessities of life. All right, I'll read it all myself. One who desires to conquer the mind must leave the company of his family and live in a solitary place, free from contaminated association. To maintain the body and soul together, he should beg as much as he needs for the bare necessities of life. Purport. See the Prabhupada's purport. This is the process for conquering the agitation of the mind. One is recommended to take leave of his family and live alone, maintaining body and soul together by begging alms and eating only as much as needed to keep himself alive. Without such a process, one cannot conquer lusty desires. Sannyāsa means accepting a life of begging, which makes one automatically very humble and meek and free from lusty desires. In this regard, the following verse appears in the Smriti literature. Dvandva hatasya garhastyam dhyana bhangadi karanam lakshayitva grihi spashtam sannyasid avicharyan. In this world of duality, family life is the cause that spoils one's spiritual life for meditation. Specifically, understanding this fact, one should accept the order of sannyāsa without hesitation. Om jnana timirandasya jnanandana shalakaya chakshu unmilitam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So, one who desires to conquer the mind must leave the company of his family, live in a solitary place. And in subsequent verses, we'll see that he describes the Ashtanga Yoga system. He's talking about Omkar, sitting down in a solitary place and so forth. So, this is certainly true unless one is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, even in whole household life. Can we say that Bhaktivinoda Thakur couldn't conquer the mind until he finally took Babaji? No. And there were so many associates of Lord Chaitanya who were householders. So, but the idea is that one has to leave or transform one's living condition, even if you're in household life, to one which is centered on Krishna, on renunciation. And this is the problem with ordinary household life, that it's anything but centered on renunciation. We get right from the beginning of Bhagavatam, practically beginning of second canto, anyway, which is kind of a new beginning for the Bhagavatam. Shukadeva Goswami is speaking about that. He praises the question of Maharaj Parikshit, Vadhyana Shate Prashna Krato Loke Tang Napa Atmavit Samatang Pangsa Shota Vyadasha Yakparaha. This is a very wonderful question. And what was the question? What should one think about? What should one do? What should one hear and chant at the end of life? Because that's what he was faced with. He voluntarily did that. He could have counteracted the curse or whatever, but he chose to say, take this as the opportunity of renunciation. And he sat down by the bank of the Ganges or the Yamuna, and he heard the Srimad Bhagavatam in 7 days. So the question was, what should one hear and what should do at that time? So he praised the question. But then immediately, Shukadev goes into criticizing ordinary contingent souls. Sholta vyadini rajanam ninang sandhi sahasrata apashitam apatam griheshu grihamedinam. So he's speaking about the grihamedis. Grihamedis are those who have taken a vow, as Prahlad Maharaj puts it, to try to enjoy materialistic family life. And that is a condemned position, because it assures one of another birth, of building attachments, and there's no question of controlling the mind, and so forth. So, but still, there is a version of household life which is centered on Krishna, and which all of the members of the household can be advanced. Even the children, they can advance in devotional service. But even there comes a time when one should leave. And that's why we find the great Acharyas, because Srila Prabhupada himself did that. Before he took sannyas, he didn't take sannyas right away, but then eventually he did after a few years. But the point is that he saw that his household life was an impediment. His wife wasn't in the mood to help him, and she wanted to sell his Bhagavatam to get the tea biscuits. All those things, indicated it was not that favorable a situation. So after quite a few years of preaching and also maintaining his business and maintaining the family, he decided to actually separate himself. So the consideration is, and no matter how good the family life is, there's supposed to be a point where you leave it, because in the final stage, that's why vanaprastha is there, and ultimately sannyasa. But the whole idea is that the human life has a mission. There's a mission. It's not just to try to be comfortable and raise a family and do all these things, because that just increases one's attachments, increases one's being rooted within this material world, which you're trying to get out of. So if you have no idea that there is such a thing as a spiritual life, that life after death and so forth, then naturally you're going to try to increase your material situation here. But we see even in Prabhupada says, practically marriage is an imagination in the modern world. It's just an arrangement for sense gratification. But because the general society is so degraded, one can easily be diverted, even though he may be, enter a pious household life and intend to do the right thing. But it's very, very difficult in the modern age to do that. So the idea is that one has to conquer the mind, right? In the conditioned state, in the Grihamedi ashram, the mind is in ashram, in the Grihamedi situation, the mind is one's worst enemy, because it's always being filled with different desires for sense gratification. And you're inevitably trying to fulfill those, and being frustrated in that, you take shelter of some intoxication or whatever it is, It's very difficult. So Srila Prabhupada came to give the knowledge of Bhagavatam and Lord Chaitanya's movement, and he found that the only way it was going to work is that he had to introduce the Grahastha ashram, because the insincere people were coming with their girlfriends, and they were interested in chanting Hare Krishna, and they were curious about Bhakti. So what was he? No, he said, no, you have to take sannyas first. No, he saw the practical need. And then he was so much was enlivened when 3 household couples, one with a baby on her back, Saraswati, the famous 3 couples who went to England, getting trained up for a week or so, and in Montreal, I think it was, Prabhupada showed them some things about kirtan, enlivened them, and they did amazing things. They it wasn't easy, because they didn't really have financial backing, and somehow to survive. But they were able to, as famously, beat the Beatles, most famously George Harrison, and were able to start a temple there, and the whole thing with the George Harrison giving the manor. So Prabhupada saw the value of his Krishna conscious household disciples. That wasn't an impediment at all. So that consideration has to be there. But the general principles here have to be understood. that materialistic family life is certainly an impediment. I mean, this was Prahlad's first instruction to his father. This is where he finally revealed that he's not simply being trained in all the demoniac techniques and everything. His father asked, "What did you learn today, Prahlad?" And he was so affectionate. I mean, he just came back from school. He put him on his lap. He smelled his head. And so, what did he say? This is like the epitome of truth, speaking truth to power, isn't it? Tat sarumanye sudavaya dehinam sadasam udvigna dhyam sadgahat hit vatmapatam grihamanda kupam vanam gato yad hadamashriyeta. That could be right in the purport here, or that could be this verse that we just read. So first he says the best thing, sadhu. Sadhu can mean not just a person but also good, or the famous sadhu sadhu, which means bravo, bravo, when someone does something good. So, tat sadhu manye. My opinion, father, and Prabhupada, he didn't call him father, he called him the best of the demons, asuravarya. And then Prabhupada asked in his lecture on this verse, best for whom? Dehinam, for every living entity, for the embodied soul. Tat asuravarya dehinam, who is, in the ordinary course of life, sada samudvigna dhyam, whose intelligence, his mind is always disturbed in material things. Either by some desire you can't fulfill, or by some danger you can't escape, or a million different ways. Mind is always agitated. Sada samudvigna dhyam. Why? Asadgrahat. Because you're holding on to the impermanent. You're taking shelter, quote, of the impermanent, beginning with your own body, right? And then there's the body of your family. And then there's your bank account. And then there's the government, a million different things. A car, your insurance. It's all a sat. And you're sat. And so eventually, these things fail you. And you see that happening all over. People don't want to die. And another Prahlad's prayers later on, he talks about that. Bala sineha sharanam pitarona singa. Without your blessings, the parents can't protect the children. The doctor can't really cure the patients. And what was the third one? What is it? No, I don't think so. Oh, yes, the boat, right. A boat is a failure. I always give that analogy here because we're right by the ocean. What is it? Sort of asadgrahat. So grabbing onto, holding onto for dear life, the asat. So you're in a boat here. People like to take their boats out of the ocean or on the bay. But the boat springs a leak. All right. And well, now we're panicking. Well, okay, at least we got our life preservers. So let's go into the life preservers, and we'll be seen, and we'll be okay. So you and whoever you're with, you go into life preservers, and you're floating there, waiting for someone to take you. And then you find, oh my God, the life preservers are also leaking. They're also failure. Now what's going to happen to us? You're taking a shelter of the asat, that which is fallible, which really can't save you. And the big thing you're taking shelter of is this very body. That's the asat grahat. So therefore, he uses this word, samudvigna dhyam. The mind is always udvigna. And if his prayers, near the end of his prayers, he has this famous prayers. Nai vodvijay, the same word, udvijay. I'm never disturbed because I'm always with you. I've crossed the river of Vaitarani because my consciousness is with you, you're across the river. And whenever I am, I can sing your glories and merge my mind into an ocean of nectar. So this is the life of the pure devotee. He can actually conquer fear by taking shelter of Krishna, the source of all fearlessness. Because he knows the worst that can happen is this stupid body can be destroyed, but I'm not the body. Right? If you're actually in full knowledge. So Prahlad, he say, but people, so what's the solution? So he's recommending to his father, samudvigdhyam asadgrahat hitva atmapatam griyamandakupam. That's exactly what this verse says. Hitva atmapatam griyamandakupam. Give up that household which is nothing but a blind well because it's based on all material attachments and everything, rather than having Krishna in the center. Give up that griyamedi life, which obstructs the progress of the soul. Hitva atmapatam griyamandakupam. Then what should he do? Last line. Vanam gato yad hadamashriyeta. Go to the forest, and probably makes it clear that the commenters mean that forest is Vrindavan. Vanam gato yad Hadamashriyeta. Those words struck Hiranyakashipu like a thunderbolt. He's not going to take shelter of Hari, who is his arch enemy, because he killed his brother Hiranyaksha. That's why he went and performed all these austerities. So Prahlad's just this young little boy, so he couldn't blame him. He must have been misguided by someone too. Who could that be? Shanda and Amarka. So he looks over at the teachers and says, well, we didn't teach him this. We don't know where he got it. So anyway, that's Prahlad. And again and again he does that. Until Father, he says, Father, you're like a poison tree in the forest of our dynasty, so we're going to kill you. So he gives his henchmen over, and you know the incredible story. They try to throw him off a cliff, crush him under the elephant's foot, poison, cut to pieces, boil him in oil. Nothing would work. And it wasn't that, it only didn't work. He wasn't even troubled. He was so absorbed in Krishna and thoughts of Krishna. He's the exemplar for meditation, for being absorbed like that. And so his father was worried, because that's a tremendous strength, that defensive strength, to not be able to be injured or killed in that way. So you know the story. We've just read recently the pastimes of Prahlad and his wonderful prayers. So he's coming back to this. So one of these solutions is to leave that family life. Bharat showed that at an early age. Oftentimes it's much later the kings will leave, go to the far. But he left at an early age. He left his young wife, his kids, his wonderful kingdom, and took shelter of the forest. And he achieved the state of bhava, right? He was such a incredible bhakta. But because he was alone, this is not, we're meant to come satam prasangan, mamaviryas, strengthen each other and support each other. So when that whole thing happened with the deer, any kind-hearted soul, what to speak of a devotee, would try to take care of this poor deer who now has no mother. You know the story, I don't go through it. So he became attached to the deer, and then he had to take shelter again. In his next life, he was so advanced that he could remember, and even though he was a deer, he's hanging out outside the ashrams of the devotees listening to the katha. So that's another kind of story. But the basic principle is, of course, valid. That either one makes one's family life into an ashram life. It's grihastha ashram, means it's a shelter, and Krishna consciousness Krishna is in the center, which is fine, even though eventually that also one should leave, but not right away. And or one escapes, the family life. I wasn't a family man, but I was living a life that was, wasn't conducive to spiritual life. And I was interested, I became attracted. This was the great value of Prabhupada's movement, is that if you just visit the temple and you see the kind devotees are there, they give you prasadam, they induce you to chant, and before long you find that you're more at home there than you are, So but the basic principle is that we have to realize that we're living with our most dangerous enemy, the materially attached mind, the uncontrolled mind. As Krishna says famously, the mind is the greatest friend of the living soul and also the worst enemy. That mind, which is spontaneously attracted to Krishna, which it can be if you cultivate Krishna consciousness properly, is your greatest friend. But that mind which is spontaneously and stubbornly giving you thoughts of sense gratification is your worst enemy. So then you adapt the techniques to control the mind. That's what this whole verse is. One who desires to conquer the mind must leave the company of his family life and live in a solitary place. But I would say, and we'll probably hear in subsequent verses, that there are these great acharyas who are family men. Lord Chaitanya, especially in his Navadvip days, he had so many wonderful householders. They didn't have to leave home. Anyway, there's a whole list that you know about. But Lord Chaitanya did at a certain point. He left and showed and took sannyāsa. And he showed the pinnacle of detachment, and of course Krishna consciousness. So that is option is there, but in Lord Chaitanya's movement, Krishna consciousness can be successfully practiced within household life, but it should have a time limit. There should be a point that when you're 50 or whatever, when you take vanaprastha or even sannyas, as Prabhupada did. All right, let's just go with the purport. See. So this is another point, that sannyas means accepting a life of begging, which makes one automatically very humble and meek and free from lusty desires. Okay, that's great. But if you try, in other words, sannyas works in ISKCON because the sannyasis, they don't just wander around, in the forest or anything like that. They go from temple to temple and center to center in this way. They're leading sannyas life and preaching, and that's wonderful. They renounce. But when Prabhupada took sannyas, there wasn't that way. There was no. I mean, there was the Gaudiya Math, of course, but he couldn't find help in his mission, to preach in English, especially to go abroad. So he eventually was living alone, and because he was in India, he could go out on the street and sell his back to guided magazines and get enough to maintain body and soul together, and had donors like that. But in a society like the United States of America, where are you going to go? Are you going to can you really, can sannyasi live by begging door to door? I don't think so. The culture isn't there. You see, that's the problem. And the other thing is that there's also, this deterrent, which is that the social condition is such that, I mean, what's supposed to happen when you take? Well, your elder sons take care of the wife, right? That's always the case. And you take shelter, just like Kardama Muni. He left, and Kapila Deva was there, take care of the wife, the Devahuti, and she, of course, he was the Supreme Personality of God, but the format was there. So that because of the association, because of Krishna, of all of the centers all over the world, sannyasis can go from center to center enlivening devotees, and they'll be nicely fed and clothed, and honored. So that works. But if that's not there, then it's very difficult to take sannyas if the culture isn't such that you can be supported. That's another consideration. Okay. And then he quotes this verse, in this world of duality, family life is the cause that spoils one's spiritual life and meditation. So, of course, what comes to mind, Rishabhadev's teaching, in the first verse, he talks about renunciation. He talks about austerity, not wasting one's life and acting like the hogs. Nayam deho deha bhajang niloke, kashtan kaman anate vid bhujange. That this human life is not meant for working hard just to get the objects of the senses and live like, and be attracted to hoggish enjoyments, So what's it for? Tapasya, tapo divyam, not just some any old tapasya that where you can get some siddhis or you can do, no, that's not the purpose. Tapo divyam putrakayin sattvam shuddhye. You perform those austerities by which your conscience will become purified. Divine austerities. Tapo divyam putrakayin sattvam shuddhye. And from that, yasmad, what do you get? What's the end of it all? Who can, what? Brahma saukyam tvanantam. Yes, spiritual happiness which has no limit. It has no end, In other words, it expands time. In other words, it can go on forever. And it also has no depth, meaning that the depth of it is greater than Brahmananda, way greater than any sense gratification. So if one has any faith, if you have faith in the teachings of your spiritual master, of the Bhagavatam, then this is a proposition that you should really consider. Where are you going to invest? Not your money, but your time, your attention, your energy, you see. Because if you invest it in material thing, the best you can do is enjoy flickering sense gratification, which is the source of all miseries. I guess I have to surrender to it, that I'm going to quote this verse in every class I ever give from now on. Yehi sangsparjita boga dukkha yona evate ajandabanta konteya nateshu ramate Buddha. Brand new translation. Intelligent people do not take part in the pleasures which are due to the contact of the senses with the sense objects. O son of Kunti, such pleasures are the sources of all misery, and they have a beginning and an end, and so the wise do not take part in them. The wise do not delight in them, you see. So then the question comes, well, okay, well, where can we get our pleasure if we're taking all these sense gratification away? So there's a hint actually in the previous verse. It says, Bhaya sparsheshu asaktatma vindatyatmani yat sukham sam brahma yoga yuktadma sukham akshayam ashnate. That's basically the same thing that Rishabdev says. One can, by avoiding this sense gratification and learning how to contact the Supreme Brahman, in other words, Krishna, he sung Bhaya sparsheshu asaktatma. It's all external, this sense gratification, the senses, right? Sparshu asaktatma, not attracted. Bhaya asaktatma, vindit yatmana yatsukam, enjoying the happiness within. By contacting Krishna, who's with us at every moment, the super soul, Krishna is there, the source of all bliss. What is that famous line in the Brahma Sutra? Anandamaya abhyasat. Anandamaya, he's always filled with bliss. How do we know? From the pastimes, abhyasa, we can see his life. So we're part and parcel of Krishna, therefore we also intrinsically have that ability to always be in bliss. But we have to reestablish the contact by yoga, by bhakti yoga, with that ocean of bliss, which is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's really how we can be happy. And then, then you can laugh at these fleeting sense gratifications, or really kind of, oh boy, I'm so lucky not to be entrapped like that. Just like Yamunacharya, who wants to chant the verse. You know it. Ramapati. Yadavadi. No? Okay. Yadavadi mamacheta Krishna padadavinde nama namana sadhaman yuditam rantam asid tadavadi batanadi sangame smaryamane bhavaki mukhavikatu sustinishti vanangsha. Prabhupada immortally says, they spite on it. Spit on it. So he's saying, and this is interesting because the history of Yamunacharya, he was a wonderful brahmachari student, right? And he defeated this king's courtier, who was a great debater. And so the king had promised him half the kingdom because no one thought that he had a chance, just a 15-year-old boy. So he defeated him with some very clever questions, which I forget. So he had half a kingdom, which is a big kingdom for a little kid. Anyway, so he became a king, and he enjoyed like kings do. But then a friend of his from the ashram days came to visit him and said, let's go for a walk in your gardens, So sure, in the old days. So they started walking, and finally his friends started reminding him of some of these nectar shlokas he used to know in the ashram. And Yamunacharya suddenly recalled that, and before long he was in a different place, and he just kept walking. He left the kingdom and became Yamunacharya, and then he wrote Stotra Ratna and so many other things. So, but he had that realization. He was able to fully explore material pleasures, and finally he came back to his senses and rejected them and said, that's just a waste of time, plus it assures you of miserable life. As Rishabdev also says, Nunam pramatta kurade vikarma yadindriya pritaya apranoti. Here we go with the word sadhu again. Na sadhu manye yata atmanoyam asannapi klesha da asadeha. Certainly those who are simply after sense gratification and don't care what they do for it, vikarma, they do all kinds of vikarma, sinful activities, are completely mad. Not just matta, pramatta. Because by acting in this way, they assure themselves of another material life or another suffering. So is that a good investment? For this occasional flickering, miserable material happiness? And nowadays, everything is available. We'll take this drug, that drug, this drug. Now there's thousands and thousands of kids dying of this fentanyl and other drugs. It's just insanity. Why do they do it? To enjoy, or maybe to just get through another day, or whatever it is, So we're being saved from all that. Krishna consciousness is so attractive and so full and meaningful if you take it seriously, that you can just be as I was, horrified at my life, where I was skating next to disaster on the Lower East Side in the drug culture. But Krishna inspired me to. Yes, I was smoking marijuana. I confess, but I was not at all attached to that when I finally came to Krishna consciousness. But that's what this is. This is a life-saving movement. Yes, your life is eternal, I know, but to take human beings and attract them, their intelligence, with the books, with the philosophy, with the chanting, with the personality and everything, it's the only hope for this world. And here, yes, at one point one should leave it. It certainly should leave a material family life. But even if you take it seriously and you have a Krishna conscious family life, that also shouldn't be for all the days, as Prabhupada says. There should be a point where you take vanaprastha and sannyāsa. All right, it's almost 8:30. Questions, comments on some of these points? This is a long chapter. You got another 50 verses here. So it's all along this line.
My question is simple. Just a curiosity. In the purport, when Srila Prabhupada refers to that verse, and he just says in the Smriti literature,
Yeah.
do you have an idea as to why he doesn't say which Smriti literature? Do you know where that one's coming from and why he doesn't say what?
I don't know. This is not a familiar verse to me. I don't know if it was quoted anywhere else. I could do a little research for you, and if you really want to find out. But sometimes Prabhupada would do that. If it's not in the commentators, they often don't give then that's what will happen.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, okay. Yes, Maharaj, give him the mic.
Srila Prabhupada is really just kind of riffing off Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary.
Mm-hmm.
And in his commentary, he quotes that verse, but he just says, Smriti says. So that's how Srila Prabhupada quotes it.
Yeah.
So it's probably not particularly familiar to Srila Prabhupada either.
Yeah, I probably won't be able to find the source of it. But the source is now purport in Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavatam. All right. If there's no other questions, we'll end on a high note. I mean, this is all high note, don't get me wrong, but it just the nectar of that is awaiting us if we can become pure. So this is a verse from the Stavamala, and I was very inspired by this verse some years ago, and I put it into a poem. And it's a prayer to have the lotus face of the Lord grow in one's heart eternally. Smita ducha makadanda syandi bhaktara vindam tavapada padahang sanvishta gandham mukunda vidichata pashupali netra saranga rangam mamadidiyata dage sangamangi karotu. From the lotus of your face, dear Lord, trickles forth the luscious nectar of the beauty of your smile. Your exalted devotees, great swans, seek the fragrance of that lotus which does air their hearts beguile. Your beloved gopis' eyes, mad bees, taste the most exquisite pleasure in that lotus of your face. O my dear Mukunda Dev, I pray, may the lake of my poor heart be by that lotus ever graced. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Uh-oh. Okay. Class dismissed, but I didn't call on Vijay. Vijay, you got something?
Yes, Dravida Prabhu.
Okay. I'll try to answer your
My
question.
question is related to conquering the mind
Yes.
and association with devotees.
Uh-huh.
And it goes as follows. When associating with devotees, how do you know that you are in the presence and in the association of a devotee who already has conquered his mind?
Well, if he doesn't speak any nonsense or do any nonsense, then you can say, well, this must be pretty advanced. You can see as Prabhupada famously, by the symptoms, by the characteristic. And it's actually, there's degrees of conquering the mind. I mean, if you're in the middle of a wonderful kirtan in Mayapur, there's 1,000 devotees chanting, and you're absorbed in the holy name. At that point, if your mind is not, being fixed on Krishna, then you have a problem. But But you may, you may eat a little too much, and you get up, you miss Mangalartik, and then your mind went all over the place. You had some kind of dreams, you haven't had in a while. So there's that. Basically, you can see by the character of the devotees, if you how eager are they to hear and chant about Krishna, and to do service. Service attitude is so important. When you see a devotee who's always looking, for services, something needs to be done, then you can see their mind's in the right place. But conquering the mind is not so easy. Your mind may be in a good place for a while, but then the mind takes over and makes you do something that's not so conducive. So as always, you read the Shastra and you can see as the symptoms or the characteristic of someone who's conquered the mind is that they're always eager to do service and to glorify the Lord. And that's the basic principle of it. And those type of devotees you should try to associate with and read with. What is Padasparana Katanam Pavanam Bhagavad-yasha Mitodati Mitostustir Nivrita Mitaratmanaha. That this is 11th canto. I think it's part of the Yogendras. Parasparana Katanam. It's the same as Krishna says in text 8 of the 10th chapter. You get Bodhiyantak Parasparam. They get together, they glorify Krishna. Paraspadano Katanam. What do they hear? What kind of kata? Pavanam Bhagavad-yasha. The glory of the Lord who is the purifier of the devotee. Pavanam Bhagavad-yasha. And what is the result? Mito ratir. They develop affection with each other. Mitos tushtir, mutual satisfaction. And they nourish each other's detachment as well. Mito ratir, mitos tushtir, nivrita mitar atmanaha. So this is the kind of devotees we should search out. I remember there's this wonderful, I forget his name now, but he was in LA when I was there at 75 through 78. And he would always have one of these bags like I carry, and he had there the nectar of devotion. And he would walk up to anybody who's, looks like he's not rushing towards some service, and he would have, would you like to hear something from the nectar of devotion? And you'd pull out the book. You remember? Vishal. No, it wasn't Vishal. Yeah. And it was a wonderful thing, He was very eager to share, his enthusiasm for the books, and he wanted to draw you into that. So that's the way that we control the mind. We absorb it in hearing and chanting and glorifying, and as Prabhupada said famously, thinking of ways that we can spread Krishna consciousness. He said that's the best way. So that's the best I could do on that, Vijay.
Yes, Dravida Prabhu, thank you very much. You're most kind. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Bol.